California, at least 13 people were arrested as hundreds blocked traffic on 2 major highways, waving Mexican flags and burning a giant effigy of Donald Trump. Police fired rubber bullets, and pepper spray at hundreds of protesters after the crowds took over major intersections.
Load up, load up, load up, we rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake, falling, 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 falling.
Fraud, homophobia, sexual assault, white supremacy.
In terms of reaching out and being inclusive, he's done that too. And a will to rest, to make things better, and opportunities to embrace the underserved communities.
White privilege!
Load up, we rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
Here in New York, as many as 10,000 people surged through the streets and surrounded the barricaded-off Trump Tower where Donald Trump lives.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
We reject the president-elect! Load up, load up, load up, we rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
I think it speaks to the disenfranchisement of the people that someone like him could be seen as offering anything to the masses.
Load up, load up, load up, we rubber bullets.
Little snowflake falling from the sky.
What about gay people? Trump has vowed to protect the LGBT community from a fanatical ideology that represents its biggest threat: radical Islam.
As your president, I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology.
Load up, load up, load up, we rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake, falling, 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 falling.
He is a racist.
Under Obama, more black people are living below the poverty line. The number of African Americans on food stamps has increased 58% under Obama.
On every leading economic issue, on the major economic issues, black Americans have lost ground in every one of those leading categories. So for the last 10 years, it's not been good for black folks.
Is this how the left helps black communities? By making them poorer and more dependent on government. Race relations are at their worst in decades. 8 years of Obama has been devastating for the black community.
He is a sexist. He is a neo-Nazi.
Well, we don't understand why you called in the National Guard.
Falling on my nose.
Not my president. He is a lying ass.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake,
Fake ass.
little snowflake falling from the sky.
Dumb ass son of a bitch.
Load up, load up, load up, we rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake falling, 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 falling.
That's not my president. That's not my president.
Load up, load up, load up, we rubber bullets.
Falling in my hand.
Thank you for taking America back 60 years of progress.
Falling on my head.
You just voted in a Nazi fascist.
Falling on my nose. Falling in my hand. Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
What you gonna do about it? What you gonna do?
The following is a Nightside Radio Studios production. From the wind-powered Nightside Radio Studios,
tear down this wall.
This is the J.J. McCartney Show.
It's this man. It's the compassion. It's the dignity. It's the wisdom. It's the horse sense of the guy.
Did you know that 65% of the people murdered in the last 10 years were killed by handguns?
Would it make you feel any better, little girl, if they was pushed out of windows?
The American people have seen the truth, and they can see through your lies. There's coming a day when publications such as yours turn into nothing more than flea market advertising. They'll be handing it out for free in grocery store parking lots under everybody's windshield wiper. Yeah, that's the future for the Washington Post and the New York Times and every other liberal publication in this country. We are not going to tolerate your bull anymore. None of it. The American people are fed up. I thought we made that clear on November 8th, but apparently you people in the media just don't get it. A new chapter in American history begins now.
It is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you the President-elect of the United States of America.
Donald Trump is the person to make America great again.
We are a team.
They said it couldn't be done.
Together, we will lead our party back to the White House.
He said it must be done.
Beginning on January 20th, we cannot afford to be so politically correct anymore. The most important difference between our plan and that of our opponent is that our plan will put America first.
Here's J.J. McCartney.
Yes, we are, ladies and gentlemen. Hello there. Welcome. It's Tuesday. Tuesday, the 13th day of February. That's just a little behind myself today. But that's okay, because everybody else is behind me. It works out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. We have got loads of news for you today. And we'll also take your phone calls. And we'll just keep on rocking and rolling all the way through. The J.J. McCartney Show news and comment live next. All right, my friends, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. I really do. And that you're, that you're feeling chipper. For most of us, yes, we have a little bit of winter left before we get to the spring, but I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, every day that sun stays up a little longer, every day, and it's looking more and more like springtime. I just have this great feeling that we're going to have a wonderful spring right here. Yes, we are. Now, let's get on to the news of the day, shall we? And we begin with President Trump. He's been making some statements regarding what's going on in the Middle East, and specifically Israel and the PLO. I don't want to use the word Palestinians because, as you have learned, if you've listened on Wednesdays with IQ, there is no such thing as Palestine. Okay, Palestine was never a nation. They've never been a recognized nation. Just a bunch of, I guess you would call them transient Arab transplants and other odds and ends. It's kind of like a Heinz 57, but there is not a bloodline of Palestinians. And they've never had a king. They've never had a government, so to speak. At least, as I said, none recognized. None recognized. And this idea that you can just occupy any place you go, and that's your home, and that you lay claim to it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. At least it doesn't to me. If you are going to claim some place as your homeland, then basically what the Palestinians are a bunch of squatters. All right? They're a bunch of squatters. And we can be, we're not going to be politically correct, but we could be politically correct and say nice things about, whatever. But the simple fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, Israel owns Israel. It's really not that hard to figure out. Israel owns Israel. Why is that so hard for some people to understand? Israel owns Israel. Okay. Well, President Trump warning both sides will need to compromise in the Middle East. President Trump says both sides need to make the decisions to achieve peace in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. President Trump said in a newly published interview, he said, right now, I would say the Palestinians are not looking to make peace. They are not looking to make peace, he said in the interview with the Israeli newspaper Israel Hayom. He went on to say, and I'm not necessarily sure that Israel is looking to make peace. So we are just going to have to see what happens. That's one of the most honest statements by a president I think I've ever heard. I mean, it's if either side were motivated for peace, but the thing is, you cannot ask the Israelis to be motivated for peace when they're constantly dealing with missiles fired from the Palestinian-held areas or Palestinian-occupied areas. I mean, Trump's interview was at the White House, was with Boaz Bismuth, Israel Hayom's editor-in-chief, who explained Trump told him there were some subjects he couldn't discuss. I interviewed Trump before the latest escalation in Israel's north, before Israel clashed with Syria and Iranian forces at the Syrian border on Saturday. But even then, it was painfully clear that Syria and Iran are testing the U.S., checking how far they can push the Americans, including reports of chemical attacks and hospital bombings in recent days. When I asked Trump if Israel is free to operate in Syria and in Lebanon against Iranian targets, he adopted an air of uncharacteristic ambiguity. But the message was clear. When it comes to Iran, it is best to let actions do the talking. The U.S. is keeping its cards close to the chest, said the president. Now, when he asked if it's possible to prevent Iran from establishing permanent military bases in Syria and in Lebanon, the president said, "You are going to see. You can watch and see." He also responded, "We will see," when asked if the Ayatollah regime still will be in place in Iran when he leaves office. And about the Israeli right to defend, when you're talking about an existential threat, is there any way that we could ever say to Israel, you don't need to defend yourself, just take it? I don't think so. Israel's right to defend itself. If bases are built in Syria and Lebanon, the president said, I don't want to comment on that right now. It is too soon. Bismuth wrote, unlike Obama, Trump realizes that actions are far more powerful than speeches. Actions like bombing Syria or relocating the American embassy, for example. It appears, he says, that Trump understands the profound truth behind the iconic line. When you have to shout, when you have to shoot, shoot. Don't talk. The editor wrote that as someone who has personally met Trump on a number of occasions, including 3 times in the Oval Office, I could sense a change in him this time. In my view, the change was for the better. He was more serious, more thoughtful, considering my questions before firing back, and also more inquisitive, asking me far more questions for a change. Now, not only has he fulfilled his campaign promise on Jerusalem, officially recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital on December 6th, it was apparent that the very question regarding the meaning of his Jerusalem recognition took him by surprise. To him, the meaning of the move is self-evident. Anyone with a brain should be able to understand it, even if they don't agree with it. He said Trump was handed a particularly challenging inheritance by Obama. A massive Russian and Iranian presence in the heart of the Syrian conflict. Bismuth said that there are 2 key actions to remember. Trump's caution to Iran over its ballistic missile tests and his bombing in Syria in response to the use of chemical weapons there. The editor said, contrary to the reputation he gained during the campaign, Trump actually prefers actions over talking. When he identifies an opportunity, he doesn't hesitate. He strikes. Iran and Syria should take that under advisement. He has maintained the stance despite the fact that Obama complicated matters for his successor when he stood idly by while the Russians started entering Syria in 2015. The president said he believes that he accomplished even more in his first year than he had promised. And we got certain things done that I am not sure anyone thought possible, including the biggest tax relief ever and ANWR drilling permits. That's the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which is home, it is believed, to one of the largest oil reserves in the world. And the scrapping of the individual mandate under Obamacare and deregulation, cutting like there has never been any other president ever do regarding the EPA, environmental regulations. So we've done very well, said Trump, beyond expectations. Trump said his decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital was a highlight, saying, I think Jerusalem was a very big point. And I think it was a very important point. Now, the capital, having Jerusalem be your great capital, was a very important thing to a lot of people. I have been thanked, and in some cases not thanked, to be 100% honest about it, but it was a very important pledge that I made, and I fulfilled my pledge. He said he can understand why many other presidents bailed on their promise, because tremendous pressure was put on them not to do it. Now, the other presidents, all of them, have failed to keep the promise, even though they made it as a campaign promise. But I understand it, because I will tell you, the lobbying against it was tremendously... You can't imagine how many talking heads, how many bureaucrats, and how many entrenched statists were screaming that he shouldn't do this. But he did it. So the president says there is a need for compromise on both sides. It says when people look at the death and destruction, years of death and destruction, wealth gone and dissipated, massive amounts of wealth dissipated, I think people are tired of it, he said. That's what making peace, that's why making peace is so smart for Israel and for the Palestinians. And it can lead to more than that. Trump said, I think Saudi Arabia and other countries have come a long way. Will he cut off support for nations that boycott Israel? He said, I don't want to say that because, you know, some countries maybe and some countries not. I just don't want to talk about that. While obstacles remain, he said there's a greater chance for peace now than during the previous administration. I mean, you certainly weren't very close with Obama. He gave you the Iran deal, which basically is a deal that says let's ultimately do bad things to Israel. Obama was terrible. He was absolutely terrible for Israel, said Trump. Has he seen a change in Iran since he took office? He said, I have noticed very much a change in their behavior, but I am not going to comment as to what the change is. But there has definitely been a change. You know, I love the way that this president is keeping his options open and keeping his mouth closed when it comes to these things. It is much better. It is a much better thing for Donald Trump to make the Iranians and the Syrians wonder what he will do than to openly sit there and say, this is what we're going to do. It's a much better thing that the president is doing by keeping his cards close to his vest and simply letting his actions speak for him. And, you know, when it comes to the, you know, this president has the nerve and he has the right approach when it comes to Iran. Because there are a million things that the United States can do to Iran. And it is best to make them wonder which one of them is coming next. But if they continue their aggression against Israel, such as what happened over the weekend, I would just say this. I'll just say this. It's much wiser for the president to make them wonder what's going to happen next than it is to give any kind of hint. All right, folks, phone lines are open, 855-853-5227. How do you see the president's approach in the Middle East? Is it strong enough? Is it forceful enough? Is it tough enough? And where should his focus really be right now? Honestly. All right, we'll talk about a whole lot of other things going on in the news. Of course, we heard about the white powder that was sent to Vanessa Trump yesterday. And, We'll talk a little more about that. Supposedly there's been an envelope that arrived at the Obama Washington, D.C. address that also contained some white powder, but no real details on that yet. But, the thing is, I mean, most people out there that are terrorists, I mean, if you want to have one ineffective way to do what you're trying to do, I mean, all this does really, it's a cheap thrill for somebody out there. But, boy, I tell you what, if they ever get caught, it's not a gag. If you get caught, they lock you away for 25 years. I mean, that's... it would not be enough. I mean, seriously, this kind of foolishness has no place in America. We will come back in a minute with more. Phone lines open, 855-853-5227. More of the J.J. McCartney Show on this Tuesday, the 13th day of February, will continue in just a minute.
The J.J. McCartney Show.
Hey, everybody. J.J. McCartney back here for our good friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. You know, folks, there's one thing that there never seems to be a shortage of in this world, and that is uncertainty, unrest. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Natural disasters, economic downturns, whatever it is, you can be prepared by going to MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. They have got everything you need, from ProPure gravity-fed water filtration systems to Kimberly stoves to these composting toilets. Ladies and gentlemen, at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com, you can prepare for anything. Food storage, no problem. Advice, no problem. Call our good friend Sue at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. Find out what's there for you. Great prices, great advice, and guess what, folks? You'll find it all at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com.
The fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Is this vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president.
I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
This vast right-wing conspiracy.
I never told anybody to lie.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate.
Not a single time. Never. These allegations are false.
This vast right-wing conspiracy.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate.
The Clintons took $2 million from me and hid it.
Now, what we're looking at here is the largest election law fraud in the history of the United States.
Allegations of lying about the cost of a fundraiser put together on her behalf.
This vast right-wing conspiracy.
Whatever it is you're doing, is it okay that I thank you?
You know what? We're having a good time trying to help out.
This sounds like it's going to be a great event. I'm glad you were all together so that I could tell you how much this means to me.
This vast right-wing conspiracy.
What does a waterfall have to do with a... How do mountains relate to... How is a... Anything like... What's the similarity between... And... The answer is they are all parks, because the National Park Service isn't just about unspoiled nature. It's also about history, recreation, remembrance, and so many other things. Find out what a park can be to you at findyourpark.com.
From ocean to ocean, from coast to coast, the J.J. McCartney Show covers America.
Today, my new dad threw a barbecue.
I burnt everything.
And then we played catch.
I broke Mr. Lewis's window. And then, somehow, my hand. My hand!
And then my dad even let me drive his car.
The hospital's on the right! It was a rough day.
It was a great day.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are. For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back, everybody. It's the J.J. McCartney Show on this Tuesday, the 13th day of February. Very glad you joined us. Very, very glad to have you here. Folks, I want to let you know what's going on now in California. Now, you know what I think of California. You do know, right? Well, here's the thing. They are now suing a bakery for not making gay wedding cakes. Sound familiar? Well, it should, because the state of Colorado did the same thing to a place called Masterpiece Cake Shop. The state of California, lawsuit against a Christian who refused to make a wedding cake for a same-sex couple on religious grounds, is a frivolous case meant to chill the baker's free speech rights, contends a petition to dismiss the case. WorldNet Daily reported last week a judge refused the state's request for a temporary order to force Kathy Miller of Tastries Bakery either to provide her wedding cake artistry to homosexual duos or quit the business entirely. Superior Court Judge David Lampy rejected the state's request, arguing the issue is over. It's over First Amendment free speech rights, not discrimination. The judge said the state was asking the court to compel Miller to use her talents to design and create a cake that she has not yet conceived, with the knowledge that her work will be displayed in a celebration of a marital union her religion forbids. For this court to force such compliance would do violence to the essentials of free speech guaranteed under the First Amendment, the judge said. He made clear that the State Department of Fair Employment and Housing, the DFEH, was pursuing a losing cause, saying the state cannot meet the test that its interest outweighs the free speech right at issue in this particular case, or that the law is being applied by the least restrictive means. The judge wrote, the court cannot retreat from protecting the free speech right implicated in the First Amendment. You know, I guess there's really not much more to say, is there? Yeah, the free speech right implicated in this case, based upon the specter of factual scenarios not before it. Now, Tastries Bakery defense team, the Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund, is citing the state's anti-SLAPP Inc., ladies and gentlemen, anti-SLAPP law, which protects individuals from lawsuits designed to silence them. And by that, ladies and gentlemen, we get to the crux of what this is really all about. You see, this is not about discrimination. No, no, no. What this is about is silencing dissent. That's all this has ever been about. Silencing dissent. Now, this case is a quintessential slap because it was brought to infringe defendants' free speech rights, and the DFEH cannot establish a probability of prevailing on the merits as a matter of law. The same-sex couple Mireya and Eileen Rodriguez Del Rio reported Tastries Bakeries to the DFEH for refusing to provide them a wedding cake. Yeah. So, the anti-SLAPP statute is a procedure for a court to dismiss at an early stage non-meritorious litigation meant to chill the valid exercise of the constitutional rights of freedom of speech and petition. Now, the petition explains there are two issues. The first is that the court has already ruled that the defendant's unwillingness to design and create a custom wedding cake for the same-sex wedding ceremony is a matter of free speech. The second is that the plaintiffs were unable to show the court a probability of prevailing. The petition also notes that the California Constitution's protection for speech and religion are even stronger than the First Amendment's. It argues that any injury on the part of the same-sex couple was self-inflicted because Tastries had arranged a referral to another bakery willing to provide the product. The motion came when the state agency indicated it would likely appeal the ruling that favored Miller. Charles Lamond, I'm sorry, is it Lamondry? Charles Lamondry of the Freedom of Conference Defense Fund said the state is more interested in persecuting Kathy Miller than honoring the court's well-reasoned ruling. So this motion keeps us on the offensive to protect Kathy's First Amendment rights. The same issue is before the United States Supreme Court in the case brought by the state of Colorado against Masterpiece Cake Shop and baker Jack Phillips, who refused to make a wedding cake for two homosexuals at a time when same-sex marriage was illegal in the state of Colorado. The Supreme Court is expected to announce a verdict within the next few months. The state judge had found that Miller's expression of her beliefs is entitled to protection in Associate Justice Anthony Kennedy's opinion in the same-sex marriage case, Obergefell versus Hodges. Kennedy wrote that finally it must be emphasized that religions and those who adhere to religious doctrine may continue to advocate with utmost sincere conviction that by divine precepts, same-sex marriage should not be condoned. The First Amendment ensures that religious organizations and persons are given proper protection as they seek to teach the principles that are so fulfilling and so central to their lives and their faiths. In the Colorado case, WorldNet Daily reported that while LGBT activists have portrayed it as a dispute over being treated equally in public accommodations, it's actually about the Constitution's protection for free speech and religious rights. And you want to hear how crazy they are in the state of Colorado? Listen to this. This is a commissioner with the agency that was created to look for discrimination against homosexuals. And this soundbite that we're about to play for you, it lays it out very well. This is a commissioner by the name of Diane. What the hell's her name? It doesn't matter. She's a dumbass from Colorado. And listen to the outrageous, hateful statement she made regarding religious beliefs, etc.
Freedom of religion and religion has been used to justify all kinds of discrimination throughout history, whether it be slavery, whether it be the Holocaust, whether it be, I mean, we can list hundreds of situations where freedom of religion has been used to justify discrimination. And to me, it is one of the most despicable pieces of rhetoric that people can use.
So, to this individual, she believes that religious beliefs are despicable. I mean, really, that's what she said. She basically said that, you know, there's been many, many things done in history. The Holocaust, slavery, that was done on the basis of religion, and it's despicable. Ladies and gentlemen, the First Amendment, I mean, it's the First Amendment, lady, and it doesn't say that you have the right to enforce your warped perspective on us. The fact that this case ever made it into a courtroom, whether it's in Colorado or California or wherever, demonstrates how twisted and how full of hatred the left is, and how much disdain they have for our Constitution. And that's going to take us into our next story. Our next story is from, this is Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz talks about the biggest enemies that we face in America. Some of you might be surprised by what you hear. We're going to share this with you. Alan Dershowitz, who, of course, is a longtime law professor at Harvard. He's been outspoken for almost 50 years in America. But Alan Dershowitz has something to say about the biggest enemies of America. Alan Dershowitz is not a Republican. He's not a conservative. But I think you're going to be surprised by what he has to say. Alan Dershowitz, Harvard professor of law. He's a lifelong Democrat, a prominent Harvard Law School professor, and constitutional scholar. He voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And who are his biggest enemies? They're not who you think. There's no question, he said, my biggest enemies are the hard left, said Dershowitz during an interview featured in the upcoming documentary No Safe Spaces. He said the far left poses a far greater danger to the American future than the hard right. Dershowitz referenced concerns about the August 2017 rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, that featured neo-Nazis, Klan members, and other white supremacists. The event turned deadly when a man rammed his car into a group of counter-protesters, killing one woman and injuring 19 more at Emancipation Park. The mix of political extremists included radicals aligned with Antifa, a black-clad helmet-wearing group of self-described anarchists and revolutionary communists, known for violence and threats. The crowd gathered in response to a city plan to remove a statue of Robert E. Lee as part of a nationwide push to tear down Confederate symbols. As disturbing as the neo-Nazis' views are, Dershowitz said those groups don't concern him to the degree that the hard left ones do. Saying, I'm not worried about a few dozen people with swastikas who want to replace the Jews because they are our past, said Dershowitz. Says they have no resonance on university campuses today. But the hard left, anti-Semitism, anti-Christianity, intolerance for speech, it's the future. These are our leaders, he lamented. When I used to teach 150 students in my first year at criminal law, I'd look around and I'd say, future president, future chief justice, future editorial director of the New York Times, future managing partner of Goldman Sachs. Those kids are our future. And that's why we have to worry much more about what's going on university campuses than in Charlottesville. So how does Dershowitz explain the apparent lack of opposition to the hard left on American campuses? He said, in 50 years of teaching at Harvard, Stanford, NYU, Hebrew University, you name it, I have never met a group of less courageous people in my whole life than tenured Harvard and tenured other professors, he said. They are so terrified of their own shadow. They don't want to do anything that upsets a student. Rather, professors are concerned that students may give them negative class evaluations, and thus poor reports will damage their social standing. They want their student evaluations to be very, very high. They want to be admitted to all the academic societies and clubs, said Dershowitz. I have been blackballed from numerous of these organizations. I was the most highly regarded classroom teacher for years at Harvard until I started making these points. And then groups of students attacked my ratings. They would give me 0, 0, 0, 0 in order to punish me for expressing my views. The movie No Safe Spaces, featuring Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla, sponsors a poll that found 48% of Americans believe Nazis should be banned from campus, with 40% feeling the same about white supremacists. 32% feel that way about Holocaust deniers. 24% feel that way about communists. Millennials were slightly more likely to support banning Nazis from campus and slightly less likely to support banning communists. Prager said he was troubled by the poll, arguing that all speech, including so-called hate speech, is protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution. You know, when you consider who the real enemies are, who are the real enemies of the American way of life? And how did they become so entrenched in our universities? How did they become so entrenched? I'll tell you how. They became so entrenched because The people tolerated it. The people of America tolerated the intolerable. The people of America, much like the Harvard professors that Dershowitz was alluding to, have become so lacking in courage. America, this is your future we're talking about. This is your future we're talking about, America. And sadly, far too many people are unwilling, not only unwilling to get involved, but unwilling to admit even to themselves what the truth really is. So they don't want to upset the apple cart. They don't want to risk losing any of their comforts. You know, when I think about that greatest generation that won World War II, I shake my head when I look around me. I shake my head at how soft and afraid so many people in America are today. Afraid to speak out. Afraid to pick up the phone. Afraid. Fearful. Cowering somewhere. Because they don't want to risk anything. If you had listened yesterday, you heard me say it. Now is the time to fight. Because what do you want America to look like in 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years? I mean, it's already become unrecognizable. If my grandparents were alive today, they would wonder why it is that we are not fighting mad. Because I know I wonder that. I do. Folks, we'll tell you what's happening in San Francisco and the Bay Area. It's no surprise to me. I've been telling people for years. We'll tell you all about it when we come back.
If you agree with JJ's conservative pillars for rescuing America's economy, stay tuned for more. If you are a liberal and think everything is okay, you can go pet your unicorn now.
I remember the story of a fellow who was running for office as a Republican, and he was in a rural area and it wasn't known to be Republican, and he stopped by a farm to do some campaigning. And when the farmer heard he was a Republican, his jaw dropped and he said, "Wait right here till I go get Ma. She's never seen a Republican before." So he got her, and the candidate looked around for a podium from which to give his speech, and the only thing he could find was a pile of that stuff that Bess Truman took 35 years trying to get Harry to call fertilizer. So he got up on the mound, and when they came back, he gave his speech. And at the end of it, the farmer said, "That's the first time I ever heard a Republican speech." And the candidate said, "That's the first time I've ever given a Republican speech from a Democratic platform."
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Hi. I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
Well, before I left my campsite, I was putting out my fire, and out of nowhere, Smokey Bear showed up and hugged me?
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. He likes it when people correctly put out their campfires. He's pretty big on wildfire prevention. He's just letting you know you did good with a hug. He's a hugger.
I just got a bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update!
All right, I'm going to let you go now. I've got a lot of ranger stuff to do. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
He's not angry. He's just really intense. More J.J. McCartney Show coming up next.
Are you among the millions of Americans living with chronic pain? If so, you may think prescription opioids are the solution. The truth is, the benefits of opioids are limited. Opioids only mask the pain. Opioids also come with serious side effects, ranging from nausea to withdrawal symptoms to overdose. As many as 25% of people who are prescribed opioids struggle with addiction. And those who are addicted to opioids are 40 times more likely to move on to heroin. No one wants to live in pain, but no one should put their health at risk to be pain-free. There is another choice: physical therapy. Physical therapists treat pain through movement and exercise, no warning labels required. And you get to be an active participant in your care. Choose to treat your pain safely. Choose physical therapy. Visit moveforwardpt.com to find a physical therapist near you. This public service announcement is brought to you by the American Physical Therapy Association.
Okay, we are back on the Tuesday edition on this 13th day of February. How you doing? Well, ladies and gentlemen, in the Bay Area, the number of people packing up and moving out of the Bay Area just hit its highest level in more than a decade. Carol Dayback spent 40 years in the San Jose area, and she's packing her belongings, and she's part of the mass exodus that shows no signs of slowing down. The retired engineer is packing up and calling it quits, about to move to the state of Tennessee. She said, "I loved it here when I first got here. I really loved it, but it's just not the same. Just not the same." Of course, that's understandable. I mean, people come and go from the Bay Area all the time, but for the first time in a long time, more people are leaving the Bay Area than are coming in. And the number one place in the country for out-migration is now the Bay Area. Russell Hancock with joint venture Silicon Valley said, Silicon Valley has been this place that is growing, and it was mostly growing because people relocated here and relocated from all other parts of the world. Well, that's changing. So joint venture Silicon Valley's own study of the out-migration says workers are moving to Sacramento, Austin, Portland, due to a number of factors, but topping the list is the high cost of housing. You can't even contemplate getting into the housing market here, said Hancock. I mean, you think about that, folks. He says, I don't mean just service workers. I mean highly skilled professionals. The tech elite are having a hard time affording reasonable housing in Silicon Valley. So this is difficult. It makes it very difficult for employers trying to recruit. Operators of a San Jose U-Haul business say one of their biggest problems is getting its rentals, its moving vans back, because so many are a one-way ticket out of town. Dayback cites crowding, crime, and politics as the reasons for her own exodus. We don't like it here anymore. You know, we don't like this sanctuary state status and just the politics here. She plans to sell her home for about $1 million, buy a much larger place near Nashville for less than half that, and retire closer to family and friends. So let this be a lesson to everybody. When you tax the bejesus out of the working people, your property taxes are the highest in the country, your government is insane, calling themselves a sanctuary city, and giving free public services to illegal immigrants. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they are treating you, if you live there right now, they're treating you like a doormat, and that's just wrong. And that's why everybody's leaving. Stick around, folks. Hour number 2 of the J.J. McCartney Show is coming up. Stay with us. Are these the first volleys in America's next civil war?
He's not a tough guy. He's a bully and he's a bitch.
He's a punk. He's a dog. He's a pig.
And he can suck my
He's a con, a bullshit artist, a mutt.
I'll meet him in a hotel room any day of the week and give him a Louisville Slugger.
I'd like to punch him in the face.
Kiss my mother.
Which side of the aisle is really spewing hateful rhetoric?
Pointing what appears to be a water gun at the image of President Donald Trump projected on a whiteboard, art teacher Pale Modi has now been seen by countless viewers.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Weekdays from noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, The J.J. McCartney Show, exposing the truth, exposing the lies, exposing the deep state.
It's an actor dressed to look just like President Donald Trump as he's assassinated on stage.
How much longer can America survive this kind of hatred?
Video depicting comedian Kathy Griffin holding the bloody, decapitated head of President Trump are no joking matter for the Secret Service.
The rhetoric that has inspired the violence has come from the mainstream of the Democratic Party.
They're involved in the coup, an active attempt to start a bloody civil war.
I want people to imagine an FBI director that has the stones to investigate the deep state. Imagine a justice system that has the integrity to prosecute corrupt government officials. They have refused to apply the 14th Amendment and give conservatives equal protection under the law. What we've seen here has been the gradual takeover of the government by corporatism, by globalism. They have wrested control of our government away from the citizenry and put it in the hands of a few special interests. And these special interests are as evil as the day is long.
We finally do have a president who has the integrity to do this. We finally do have a DOJ who has the integrity to do this. We know that we have people around the president who not only have the integrity, but have the information and the contacts to get everything done you just said. And you say, well, why aren't they doing it? Everything you're seeing on the news, that's what it's about. That's what this investigation's about. That's what calls of impeachment are about. That's what the globalist attack against Trump is about. That's what the hearings are about. That's what the allegations of Russian spying are about. It's about keeping them off point, keeping them off the agenda, keeping them off task. A lot of what you're watching happening right now, and the misdirection and the complete trying to keep Trump off target goes to that birth certificate. The worst crime in American history was perpetrated against America under the regime of Barack Obama. The media is complicit. Congress is complicit. Federal law enforcement apparently has been complicit. We've got a CIA whistleblower, Dennis Montgomery, whose attorney, Larry Klayman, put it all over the internet the other day that he has said that all of this spying that's been going on American people, that it resulted in manipulation and collusion with judges, Supreme Court justices, congressmen, etc., that James Comey was involved in it, that he was at the top of it. All of this stuff you're seeing about Donald Trump's with the Russians, Donald Trump needs to be impeached, Donald Trump. This is a smokescreen to keep our eyes off of what really happened and what's really going on. And America had better wake up to this, JJ.
Your federal government, your federal law enforcement agencies, our federal intelligence agencies, your federal government in toto has been compromised. The fact that Donald Trump has arrived and said, I'm not going to go along with the status quo anymore, is the cause for alarm for these people on the left. And ultimately, Carl, is it possible that yesterday was simply the first shot fired in an impending civil war between two irreconcilable ideologies?
I don't want our children and grandchildren to see or to participate or to fall victim to such a thing. I don't want our nation to go through such a thing. I don't know that we could survive that. Like Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, when he said, now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any other nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. I mean, God's people, we need to pray. We need to not be afraid to speak truth.
Weekdays from noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, The J.J. McCartney Show. Exposing the truth, exposing the lies, exposing the deep state.
Live from the Nightside Radio studios,
This is the J.J. McCartney Show.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
coming to you from Nebraska by way of Alaska. Here's J.J. McCartney.
All right, thank you, Marcus, and welcome back, everybody. It's hour number 2 of the J.J. McCartney Show. You Catholics out there, listen up. We have got a really important story to share with you coming up, hour number 2 of the J.J. McCartney Show next. Oh, by the way, phone lines are open. 855-853-5227. Hour number 2 of the J.J. McCartney Show with your phone calls and plenty more news coming up next. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being with us today. As I said, phone lines are open, 855-853-5227. Okay, folks, if you are a Catholic, I want you to listen carefully. If you are a Catholic, I want you to pay attention. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is a head-scratcher. It really, really is. The Vatican has said that China is the best example of the Church's social doctrine. Say what? Conservative Catholics are expressing shock at Pope Francis' zeal in embracing the totalitarian government of China by first agreeing to replace underground church leaders with state-chosen hacks. And now with a top Vatican official saying those who best realize the social doctrine of the church are the Chinese. Oh, of all things I wasn't expecting to read this morning, this is one of them. Bishop Marcelo Sanchez Serrando, an Argentinian, is Pope Francis Chancellor of the Pontificate Academy of Sciences and the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. He told Vatican Insider that China is exercising global moral leadership in the defense of human dignity. You heard me right. On a recent trip, Serrando said, quote, "I found an extraordinary China. What people do not know is that the central Chinese principle is work, work, work. As Paul said, he who does not work does not eat. You do not have shanty towns. You do not have drugs. Young people do not have drugs. There is a positive national consciousness. They want to show that they have changed. They already accept private property." Continuing in his lavish praise of Chinese-style communism, Serrando said, quote, "They, the Chinese, seek the common good, subordinate things to the general good. China," he added, "has defended the dignity of the human person," unquote. And in the area of climate change is, quote, "assuming a moral leadership that others have abandoned." Ladies and gentlemen, this opinion, this statement is as far removed from reality as anything I have ever heard someone say. To claim that China is leading the way when it comes to climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, who is by far the biggest polluter, the biggest violator on the planet? Communist China. Who has the worst air in the world? The citizens of Beijing. Contrasting China with the United States under President Trump, the bishop asked, quote, "How is it possible that oil multinationals manage Trump?" The comments come in the wake of the Vatican's move following 18 months of negotiations with leaders in Beijing to plot a normalization of relations to replace 2 loyal Chinese bishops with 2 state-backed bishops who had been excommunicated when they were consecrated illicitly. The 2 that have been reportedly asked to step aside are 88-year-old Peter Zhuang Xinjian and 70-year-old Joseph Guo Xin. Replacing them are 2 bishops of the Chinese Politburo, Huang Bingzang and Vincent Zan Silu, handpicked by the Chinese Communist Party. Criticism within the church has been heavy. Cardinal Joseph Zen, the 86-year-old retired Bishop of Hong Kong, wrote an open letter posted on Facebook saying the Vatican is selling out struggling Catholics. The Vatican, he said, has deferred to a rake Chinese structure. Steve Mosher, a Catholic with decades of experience in China, including being tossed in jail, asked, why should the Catholic Church participate in its own dissolution and destruction? Why would we do this? He told EWTN's Raymond Arroyo that the Vatican's negotiating strategy is simply negotiating the surrender of the underground church to a false church created by China's atheists. As to the recent comments by Sarando, Catholic author Paul Kengor wrote the following, saying that, of course, is a jaw-dropper. You couldn't find a radical leftist at the Huffington Post or even The Nation who would dare drop that whopper. Kengor points out that China accounts for half the world's female suicides and still practices population control and forced abortion. He said, let's be candid about this, as this is a dire moment that demands frank talk. Kengor said, these are the thoughts of a person who is ideologically unhinged. Pope Francis has warned of the corrupting force of ideology. Our always candid Pope condemns ideological fanatics. Well, here's a bishop close to Francis, whose ability to comprehend reality has been corrupted by ideology. Kengor quotes George Neumeier, who was the former editor of Catholic World Report, as telling him, quote, I wrote about the Pope's capitulation to the Chinese communists, in my book, The Political Pope. The most recent developments were telegraphed by the Pope years ago. I also wrote about the bishop. He has been a Vatican gateway for the George Soros crowd and very much reflects the Pope's thinking. He is the one who set up the Bernie Sanders invite to the Vatican and made a point of telling everyone that Sanders was the only presidential candidate invited. His academy is overflowing with socialists and communists. Kengor, who calls Sarando an old Argentinian friend of Francis, who's part of his inner circle, believes the Pope is deeply influenced by his ideas. Okay, where are you Catholics out there? I want to hear from you. I want you to explain to me how your church can survive this kind of freakish radicalism. I mean, literally as high up as it gets in the Catholic Church. And tell me, please, how do you justify the actions of this Pope and what sounds like his chief second in making this kind of an analysis? Phone lines are open, 855-853-5227. 855-853-5227. I'm waiting for you to call. If you are a Catholic and you are appalled by this, please tell us what is going through your mind. What are the Catholic rank and file saying about this development? How can you possibly justify this kind of craziness? Somebody please tell me. Because this, I mean, I'm not a Catholic. I have a brother who is. This defies everything about courageous Catholicism that I've ever known. This defies the humanitarian efforts of the Vatican over a long period of time. It doesn't make any sense how you can laud this kind of praise on a fascist communist government, totalitarian, that still forces, they still engage in what is called gendercide. Do you know what gendercide is? Yeah. Gendercide is it's the act of, well, we want a boy. We can only have one child. We want our child to be a boy. And so if they have a girl, they just throw it away. You know, the abortion rate in China is sky high. And they have a one-child policy. Somebody please tell me, what is it that this Pope is embracing in communist China? Their work ethic? Look, the reason they have a work ethic in China is because, and believe me, I think that this is not necessarily a bad thing, but they're not big on welfare in China, okay? They're not big on giving away the farm in China. In America, we've become so obsessed with safety nets that we have forgotten to have any expectation of the people in this country. The safety nets are everything now. The safety net is the tool of the politician. I mean, this is craziness. This is real craziness happening here. So what say you? 855-853-5227. You know, is there anybody out there that even gives a damn anymore about the Catholic Church? I mean, surely we got people out there that are Catholic. I mean, what is your take on this? Please explain it to me, a non-Catholic. Explain to me how you keep on supporting a pope that is selling out the Catholic Church, the underground church in China. Please, folks, I'm getting to a point where I find it really hard to believe that nobody cares. That nobody even cares enough to express their reservations, their concerns. I just don't understand how this doesn't fire you up. I don't understand how this doesn't basically make your blood boil. I mean, here you have the Catholic Church. There's over 1 billion Catholics in the world. And yet your Pope is embracing the totalitarian government of China and is entrusting them with the Catholic Church, selling out the underground church in China. Explain it to me, please. 855-853-5227. That's our phone number. I'm blown away. I am blown away that nobody out there even cares. I am blown away that everybody out there right now is ignoring what's right there in front of your face. It really is, you know. I just don't get it. How do you not care about this? I don't get it. I really don't. I don't understand how people will sit idly by and just watch as the world around them is turning to crap. And there's not one person that even cares enough to pick up the phone. That amazes me. We'll be back.
The J.J. McCartney Show.
Hey, everybody. J.J. McCartney back here for our good friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. You know, folks, there's one thing that there never seems to be a shortage of in this world, and that is uncertainty, unrest. You know, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Natural disasters, economic downturns, whatever it is, you can be prepared by going to MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. They have got everything you need, from ProPure gravity-fed water filtration systems to Kimberly stoves to these composting toilets. Ladies and gentlemen, at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com, you can prepare for anything. Food storage? No problem. Advice? No problem. Call our good friend Sue at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. Find out what's there for you. Great prices, great advice, and guess what, folks? You'll find it all at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com.
Let's go live to Denali National Park. I'm Barack Obama, and I'd like to say hello to all of those of you who have joined us to rename Mount McKinley. From now on and hitherto, by the will of the Athabascans, it is now simply Denali. We, the Athabascans of Alaska, appreciate the gesture, Mr. President, but if it's all the same to you, we took a vote. We'd much rather name the mountain after you. You're going to name Denali after me? Thank you. We have consulted all our fellow Alaskans and asked them who we should name the mountain after. An overwhelming majority of Alaskans renaming Mount McKinley after you, Mr. President. So from now on and heretofore, for the rest of time, let this tallest mountain in North America be known by its new name, Mount Dumbass. And that concludes this ceremony renaming Mount McKinley after the 44th President of the United States.
What I say, you already know, but you don't believe. You won't accept, you don't conceive. When you're inside your car, you feel safest of all. Are you safe? Are you? 2 tons of sheet metal in your hands. 2 tons don't run on autopilot. You have a mission. It's no collision. Hold the phone. Don't text. You're angling to be next. Oh, you've done it before. What's the harm? Just this once, there's no alarm. Got your hands on the wheel? No big deal. Brothers and sisters, you won't see it coming. You're off the road. Your life explodes. It's not worth it. Don't do it. You only think there's nothing to it. Put it down. Hang up. Pay attention to highway action. Behind the wheel, there is no such thing as a small distraction. Join the conversation at decidetodrive.org, a public service message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, who would rather help keep your bones strong than put them back together.
JJMcCartney.com.
Parkinson's disease is a neurological movement disorder affecting an estimated 1 million Americans, including many under age 40. The American Parkinson Disease Association is the largest grassroots network in the United States, working to help ease the burden and find the cure for those coping with Parkinson's. Visit apdaoptimism.org today to find out how you can help millions live with dignity and optimism. Your action today will help APDA put an end to Parkinson's disease.
All right, we are back on the J.J. McCartney Show on this Tuesday, the 13th day of February. And we're going to move on. I really can't believe that nobody out there, especially, there's bound to be Catholics listening. But apparently they don't bother themselves with such things. Apparently they're too busy pursuing their own artistic endeavors, to worry about, the rest of the world, any of that. I mean, really, most people that go to Catholic churches, I just want to understand. I mean, here this guy is supposedly your Holy Father, and he's leading you toward ruin. But you're too worried about the, what am I going to give up for Lent this year? To even think about it, or even worse, God forbid that you would be critical of somebody that's leading your church right into the gutter. Oh, well. But enough about that. Ladies and gentlemen, the president has earned high marks on his infrastructure plans. And, me being a resident of the state of Nebraska, I was surprised to see this. It was like the Nebraska governor already has prepared his statement of thanks for President Trump as the nation's top elected official. Yesterday announced plans to improve infrastructure from coast to coast. Now, Governor Pete Ricketts has been working in Nebraska already to address the issue of infrastructure and has plans that would go more quickly if Nebraska would be awarded funding from the nationwide program. He says, "Thank you to President Trump for his commitment to investing in America's infrastructure," Ricketts said after attending a roundtable held by the president at the White House. In recent years, Nebraska has made significant investments in our state's infrastructure. With the Build Nebraska Act and Transportation Innovation Act, these have been critical to growing our state. The president's focus in his plan on rural infrastructure and cutting red tape will support our ongoing work at the state level. As Congress looks at how to incentivize state investment, we urge them to give credit to the work of forward-thinking states like Nebraska, who have locked in significant investments. The infrastructure plan is just one of the accomplishments by the president that has prompted an online Thank President Trump card campaign, giving ordinary Americans a way to thank the president for his record of achievement during his first year in office. He's already chalked up hundreds of successes. Trump's plan, 53 pages of it, is to turn $200 billion in federal investment into $1.5 trillion to fix America's infrastructure by leveraging local, county, and state programs that already are addressing the issue. Now, in a statement, Trump said, "For too long, lawmakers have invested in infrastructure inefficiently, ignored critical needs, and allowed it to deteriorate. As a result, the United States has fallen further and further behind other countries. It is time to give Americans the working, modern infrastructure they deserve." One senior administration official confirmed that there would, in fact, be a look-back program so that states and local governments who have already recently raised revenues aren't penalized for being forward-thinking and implementing the types of policies that we're engaged in. In other words, don't punish us for being proactive. Understand that? Now, the money, the federal money, would go towards incentives for projects to be done, those projects of national significance, and for rural block grants. Now, the administration also wants to cut the time needed for getting federal permits for various projects, an idea that was slammed by Democrats for the possibility of eroded environmental protections. Oh, to hell with you, Democrats. To hell with your, oh, what about the spotted owl? What about the poor little Gila monster? What about the pollywogs? I'm so sick and tired of these people standing in the way of, literally, making the difference between Americans prospering, Americans being able to afford a home. I mean, the Democrats' sole purpose, it seems, is to prevent Americans from working, prospering, owning property. I mean, you think about that. It's counter to their communist goals for Americans to prosper and own property. Evil in this world, the embodiment of evil in this world is made manifest in people who try through whatever means is necessary to prevent other people from acquiring and holding property. It's in their best interest that Americans be poor, broke, and desperate. That's what the left stands for. And they try to disguise their policies. Oh, we care about the poor. That's why we give them free goodies. No, no, no. No, the only reason that they do that is so that they can keep you under their thumb. That's what the Democrats stand for. Absolutely. Now, to take part in the Thank Trump card campaign, as have tens of thousands already, simply go to thanktrump.us. Thanktrump.us. Choose one of the 10 unique e-card designs. You can add a personalized message to your card if you wish, and then simply click a button to send it electronically to the White House. And it's completely free of charge. As President Trump heads into a new year, it's important he doesn't lose the courage and boldness that have enabled him to defy the establishment and get so much done for the American people. Joseph Farah, CEO of WorldNet Daily, was the creator of the campaign. He said, given all the opposition that Trump faces, it would be too easy for him to surrender to the forces that besiege him. The campaign has been endorsed by leading conservatives, such as Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, and covered by news outlets such as Breitbart News. So again, that website is thanktrump.us. Thanktrump.us. All right. Elsewhere in the news, Michael Brown. Michael Brown, a conservative. He is a speaker. He goes on, speaking tours, and scheduled to be at Appalachian State University in North Carolina. He said, when I received the invitation to speak on homosexuality and the Bible at Appalachian State University in North Carolina, I immediately accepted it, but told the campus group that invited me that it would be difficult to hold the event. I knew there would be opposition both internally and externally, and I knew there would be attempts to derail the talk. Sure enough, with the event scheduled for Tuesday night, that's tonight, there has been pressure on financial sponsors to drop out. Protests have been called for. The school has been asked to cancel the event. And false information about me as a speaking, or rather, are spreading online. So much for tolerance and diversity. When my book, quote, A Queer Thing Happened to America, unquote, came out in 2011, I offered to debate any topic in the book with a qualified academic or LGBT leader on any campus in America. My goal was not simply to debate important issues, but also to conduct myself in the most Christ-like, God-honoring way possible, to build a bridge of constructive interaction between Christian campus groups and the LGBT groups. Not only were we declined in city after city, but in some cities, the Christian campus groups told our contact people, quote, if you try to hold the event on our campus, we will shut it down. They were so concerned that they would lose their right to be on campus if such an event took place, that they were willing to actively oppose it. Talk about a spirit of fear and intimidation. A friend of ours reached out to a Christian professor at the University of Central Florida, and she booked a room for us. As a result of this, I was told, she was threatened with the loss of her job. A professor from another campus agreed to debate me on same-sex marriage. Should it be legal? And I agreed, even though that was not discussed in my book. The week of the debate, a conference call was held with 11 people, not me, but 11 other people, including university vice presidents, LGBT campus leaders, and the school's chief of police. The campus has more than 60,000 students. In the end, they decided that canceling the event would be worse publicity than holding the event. But we were required to pay for 4 armed policemen to present, or rather, policemen to be present to maintain order. And that was back in 2011, when same-sex marriage was illegal in Florida. So let's fast forward to 2018, where conservative voices are commonly opposed on college campuses, let alone Christian conservatives. And you can see why I'm not in the least surprised by the hatred and intolerance being shown. Now, what makes this all the worse, and all the more ironic, is that I was asked to speak on Christian mistreatment of homosexuality, meaning I would start my talk by addressing areas where the church has failed to reach out to the LGBT community with compassion and sensitivity. In response, the social media campaign against me and against the event announced, "Rally against this hate, because hate happens here." Then, in the campus piece attacking me, there is a striking quote, allegedly from me, quote, "LGBT people are inherently unhappy, unhealthy, sexually immoral, or rebellious to the will of God." The problem is that I never said those words, despite the quotation marks. It was a critic of mine who said this. Yet the protest organizers cite it as my word. Am I surprised? Not in the least. We will win every argument based on truth, which is why so few people are willing to debate, and why there is so much reliance on spreading lies. And when it comes to our attitude and demeanor, We will overcome hatred with love every time. And that's why the opposition must falsely accuse us of spewing hatred and lies. The protest piece even cites article titles of mine, such as, quote, "Are women nothing more than sexual objects?" unquote. As if I believe that women were sexual objects, whereas my article says the exact opposite, of course. And then, of course, the protest piece mentions that the Southern Poverty Law Center officially labeled me as a hate group member, failing to realize that, one, Dr. Ben Carson was put on a similar list, and two, the charges against me were completely vacuous, and three, the Southern Poverty Law Center removed the link to my name years ago. For the record, I took their attack on me as a badge of honor, but still corrected their many errors. As of this moment, the event organizer, Ratio Christ, is not certain if the campus will block them from using the building that has been booked, and if we'll be forced to, or maybe even able to, meet in another venue facility nearby. But I plan to make the 2-hour drive there either way, eager to interact with the protesters, eager to give a presentation and take an audience question or two, and eager to hold the school to account, challenging them to do the right thing. Will they? Stay tuned. Yep, well, I guess we'll find out. You know, the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, free speech has been under assault for a long time in America. Free speech has been under assault for a very long time. Not only has it been under assault, there has been an organized effort for decades. An organized effort for decades to blackball conservatives and especially Christians from the public airwaves. There is this organization. They're not very well publicized. A lot of people don't even know that they exist. This organization is known as Megaphone. Megaphone. There are people in every city, every big city in America, and their job is to listen to talk radio. And when they hear something that they find objectionable, they sound the alert. They put the megaphone into action. A group organized and no doubt funded by George Soros and his ilk, whose job it is to initiate telephone campaigns, email campaigns, to protest any time somebody brings this stuff up on the airwaves of broadcast radio. Regardless of the context, regardless of the content, if somebody takes a stand against the LGBT agenda, they will find themselves on the business end of boycott threats to advertisers, angry calls to radio station management, and it's disproportionate. It is completely disproportionate to the ratio of people in whatever locale these stations do business in. I mean, this is an organized campaign, and it has been in place for at least 3 decades. Does that surprise you? Have you never heard of it before? Well, I can tell you absolutely. I mean, this is as true gets. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
If you agree with JJ's conservative pillars for rescuing America's economy, stay tuned for more. If you are a liberal and think everything is okay, you can go pet your unicorn now.
You said while the law was being debated, if you like your plan, you can keep it. You said after the law was implemented or signed, if you like your plan, you can keep it. Americans believed you, sir, when you said that to them over and over.
Millions of people are trying to accept the loss of their plans you told them could be kept. And one thing that's baffling folks around the planet is how have these plans been canceled, but Two Broke Girls hasn't? I've tried and I've tried, but the effort's in vain. Never has a website inflicted such pain. For our wasted time is a bailout in sight. Can't comment, G. Can't comment, cuz. Why can't you comment? I don't have Google+. But this is your law, and now people need help. I mean, you wrote that thing. Did you just knockout game yourself? Selling hopes like selling soap, son, I'll tell you why. You can't make either one without a little bit of lie. Selling hopes like selling soap, son, I'll tell you why. You can't make either one without a little bit of lie. Selling hopes like selling soap, son, I'll tell you why. You can't make either one without a little bit of lie. Selling hopes like selling soap, son.
Today, my new dad and I shot off a rocket in the park.
Today, my new son and I failed to shoot off a rocket.
The rocket launched into the air.
And then crashed into the pond.
I'll never forget that day.
I'll never forget that day. Even if I tried.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are. For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
The J.J. McCartney Show will continue in just 1 minute.
Look up, look down, look around, look up, look down, look around. In the trees and on the ground, 'cause the ALB must be found.
If you're hearing this, you should be concerned about the Asian longhorn beetle, an invasive species that's destroying our trees. But you can help. Look for the signs and help stop the beetle.
Look up, look down, look around, look up, look down, look around. In the trees and on the ground, 'cause the ALB must be found.
Some signs of the ALB are dime-sized holes on tree trunks, a sawdust-like material called frass, and the beetle itself, with a long black body and white spots.
Look up, look down, look around, look up, look down, look around. In the trees and on the ground, 'cause the ALB must be found.
Learn all the signs and how to report them at AsianLonghornedBeetle.com. That's AsianLonghornedBeetle.com.
All right, we are back on the J.J. McCartney Show. Thanks for being with us on this Tuesday. Phone lines open, 855-853-5227. Well, you know, folks, the left loves to preach tolerance, don't they? They love to preach tolerance. And they love to accuse us of intolerance. So let me just share with you the story. Now, I don't know if you saw this yesterday, the official portrait of Michelle Obama. The official portrait of Michelle Obama that, I mean, it just looks ridiculous. It's the most atrocious picture of a first lady I think I've ever seen. And let me just pull it up here. I'll share it with those of you that are watching on YouTube, so you can see the actual picture here. Yeah, you're not going to thank me for this, I can tell you that. It's, I mean, this is the picture of Michelle Obama that they decided was going to be the one that was unveiled. And you look at that, I guess it's a dress, although it looks more to me like a circus tent. I mean, it's ugly. It's ugly. I mean, absolutely. It is just ugly. Look at that. Well, the reason I bring it up is because the artist that was commissioned to make this portrait of Michelle Obama has made a few other pictures as well. The artist's name is Kehinde Wiley. While America is captivated by the newly released portrait of former President Obama and First Lady Michelle, there's something curious about Obama's artist that's raising eyebrows. He apparently enjoys painting portraits of black women. Now, not just painting portraits of black women, but painting portraits of black women holding the severed heads of white people. You cannot make this stuff up. Kehinde Wiley, a New York artist who paints primarily African American subjects in heroic poses, was chosen by Barack Obama to create a portrait of the 44th president to be displayed at the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery. Wiley's portrait of Obama was unveiled yesterday, and while the New York Times and others sang Wiley's praises, claiming the portrait showed the president as an alert and troubled thinker, others wanted to know, why is he sitting in the middle of a giant green bush? What's with all the bushes behind Obama? Asked Twitchy. Was that some sort of subliminal play on the president before Obama? Even Rush Limbaugh weighed in, saying, "What in the world is that?" Okay, I've got to describe this. It's Barack Obama sitting on what looks like a wooden throne without a high back. And he's sitting on that throne as you might sit on yours, except that this throne looks like it's up against the ivy outfield at maybe Wrigley Field, the outfield wall at Wrigley. Now, the Times also said Michelle's portrait, painted by artist Amy Sherald, depicted the former First Lady as rock-solid cool. But others claim the rendering looks nothing like her. Still, it turns out President Obama's artist has a curious history of painting African American women holding the severed heads of white people, according to the Media Research Center. Like the presidential portrait, the subjects are depicted with floral backgrounds. One example is this painting known as Judith and Holofernes, a subject from the Deuterocanonical Book of Judith, which tells of a beautiful woman named Judith who beheads an Assyrian general named Holofernes, who had planned to destroy Judith's home city. Now, the painting is from Wiley's collection known as The Economy of Grace, a series that focused on black women whom he recruited from the streets of New York. Wiley described the collection as a celebration of black women, creating a rightful place within art history, which has to date been an almost exclusively white domain. Now, since white subjects rarely appear in Wiley's work, it's particularly curious that the painting depicts a black woman holding the head of a white man. The Media Research Center located yet another painting by Wiley, Judith beheading Holofernes, that depicts a black woman with a severed head of her white victim. The 2013 painting was unveiled at the Brooklyn Museum. Wiley has also painted many stunning portraits of African American people without depicting severed heads. Some of his work features social justice themes. In his 2015 photo story for Paper Mag, it's called Black Lives Have Mattered for Thousands of Years. He speaks about the nation's first black president and his concerns about social justice and equality in America. As the nation was witnessing the Black Lives Matter movement, Wiley wrote this: America is a country in transition. So much of the American mythos is the notion of the city on the hill, that we are a beacon of light for others to see our greatness, our social justice, and equally, in the end, though, there have to be moments in which we step back, examine ourselves, and police our own actions. We have a black president, and that is a sign of progress in many ways, but we still read in newspapers every week about young black men because their bodies are in our streets. There's significance in that, and as an artist, I have to negotiate a response that is at once critical but also curious about how this could change. These photographs move in the direction of my aesthetic, which is decidedly art historical, while exploring the strange intersection between that history and this particular moment in American culture. None of this stuff is clean. The history of art is the history of empire and social domination. Yeah. Empire and social domination. As I'm co-opting the visual language of historical society portraiture, I'm very aware that these portraits, and as a result my own works, are made on the backs of every single person who came before us in the fields of Cuba, or Haiti, or Jamaica, or Brazil, or South Carolina. On some level, we're all dirty. Well, you can say that if you want, but you don't see us walking around drawing pictures of white men holding severed black heads in our hands. No, no. We haven't done that ever. So don't try and paint with such a broad brush, Mr. Wiley, because it's just not honest, and it's just not true. All right, ladies and gentlemen, amazingly, we are out of time. We will come back tomorrow. IQ Al Rassouli will be with us on the Wednesday edition. We are live every weekday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on RedStateTalkRadio.com and JJMcCartney.com. And you can also watch the live streaming video on JJMcCartney.com if you're a glutton for punishment. All right, my friends. So we'll see you tomorrow with IQ. Until then, be good to yourselves, and if you possibly can, be good to someone else. And remember, we will win in the end because there are more of us than there are of them. Because God is with us. And because we are all in this thing together. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. We will see you on Wednesday. Until then, God bless everybody. See you then. Bye-bye.